I love you, the devil. I would worship you instead of him. I have no time for confession, for I'm too busy committing sins. My love is something special. I've never met someone like you. You made me fall from heaven, but I know just what I do.
Hi there, this is David Fernandez from High Plateau Productions, and you are listening to Beyond the Plateau, a podcast by High Plateau Productions. Today on our podcast, we are extremely thrilled to have two amazing indie artists. We have Ethan Buckner, who goes by the moniker of the Minnesota Child, and we have Tom Sless, who basically goes by Tom. And we're going to kind of dive into this fairly quickly, but just to give a little bit of background, High Plateau Productions manages Ethan Buckner, Minnesota Child. And if we have time during this podcast, we'll kind of go over just a little bit about how Ethan and I met. But as an indie music lover, as a music lover in general, one of my favorite things is when two indie artists actually come together and collaborate. Then on top of that, to be able to hear a song that is stripped down either acoustically on a guitar or on a piano, and then watch that over a time period evolve into something and hear tidbits of, finished products and tidbits of a verse or tidbits of a chorus, and then finally actually listening to the full mastered version of a song that, took a lot of time to put together. And Ethan and Tom will go over that. But just that, I love that, Tom, and I love that, Ethan, is that I think that is what I think music listeners, don't get or don't understand, or just don't understand the time and the effort to put into this, because we'll explain where you guys are at, but it's not like you guys are next door neighbors, that you're able to head on down to the local studio in Los Angeles or Texas or Nashville, wherever Tom might be at any given time. So I also find that dynamic extremely amazing and actually encouraging and, empowering to indie artists these days, is that there are ways to do it. There are ways to collaborate with some of your favorite indie artists, and they don't have to live in the city next to you. Is that there's ways to do this, with the technology that, when I was 18 or 19 or 20 or 21, 22, there was no possible way to do that. So we want to thank Ethan and Tom for taking some time out today and doing one of our amazing podcasts. So we'll start with you guys, and I'll let you just kind of like take it over. But I think for the fan base, talk about how you guys met.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are in different parts of the country, and both of us even have always traveled, but we did meet in Los Angeles and through the Los Angeles Songwriters Collective, which both Ethan and I started going to around the same time, I want to say. I think I was started to go like the end of 2018. When was that for you, Ethan? Do you remember when you first started going there?
For me, I think we met at a LA Songwriter Collective meeting, must have been sometime in late spring 2019, which is when my partner Heather and I moved to LA from the Bay Area. And I was starting to, I knew sort of moving to LA, having been, in a band in the Bay and having spent years kind of building community there, that starting over would be potentially difficult, and like both kind of like on a making new friends and starting a new community, and also just like trying to understand and connect with this massive but relatively diffuse sort of music industry in LA, that I need to find somewhere to like start connecting with people. And fairly early on, after moving there, in it would have been April 2019, I'm not even sure how I heard about the LA Songwriters Collective, but I heard about it, some gathering at T-Pop in North Hollywood, and I remember you were one of the first people who I met there. And like 3 other people said, "Oh, you got to talk about Tom about this." I was like, or that. I was like, "Oh, this is like a person I want to hang with and connect with." And that was
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I definitely remember. Yeah, it must have been summer of that year, I think, because that feels right. Summer of 2019. I was just getting in to record my first solo record, and we started writing later that year together. And Ethan should share that I mean, moving from the Bay to the LA, of all the places you got, this place 2 blocks from Venice Beach, which I was more than happy to go to for writing sessions. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Well, you know.
Yeah, the scenery there's not that bad there at Ethan's place. So we're talking about pre-COVID, 2019.
Oh yeah.
You guys get introduced and everything. So like walk us quickly through on the moment that you guys met or exchanged hellos. Hi, I'm Ethan, I'm Tom. Like how quickly did you both realize that, hey, this might be someone that I want to collaborate with? Or Ethan, you just mentioned that there were some people in the room that said you need to go talk to this guy Tom and everything. But was it a quick connection, or was it kind of like because musicians are you have your stuff, Tom has his stuff, and there's that waiting out period, or walking that fine line of collaborations and whatnot, just because of the way that the music industry is now. It's like you need to get your music out, and do I have time to collaborate? So how quickly was that connection?
I mean, I know that the session where we first wrote, which is actually when the bulk of this song came out, in terms of like the initial writing process, was in October 2019. So it was maybe a few months after we met. And I think that's one of the interesting things for me that I learned very quickly about the LA music scene was just the culture of co-writing and collaboration, which is unlike anything I had kind of experienced before, where like the music scene in the Bay Area, my experience of it was that like folks were always like happy and excited to support each other's like bands or acts that were all kind of side gigs. But LA kind of immediately got the sense that people are here because they really like, folks really want to try to make a career of it and take the craft of songwriting really seriously and work to kind of better our skills and learn from other people and collaborate. And so I was very quickly sort of introduced to the co-writing culture in LA. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think early on, like clearly, like I had a good like kind of initial like friendship connection, but also sort of realized our styles were very complementary. We write somewhat different styles of music, but like kind of come together, kind of formed its own unique sort of sound. Yeah, obviously it would be fun to write together.
Yeah, and I also think like, at the time in that part of the year, then I had just gotten done with the studio work for my first record, and I was trying to continue writing, but I was really hitting blocks. And I think some of that was because I was like so stressed about making this record, and I was going through a breakup. And by the time Ethan and I, we stayed in touch over the first couple months there, but by the time we finally sat down to write on Venice Beach, I feel like a lot of it was almost like a spiritual setting where there was like, set and setting you hear a lot about in like psychedelic spaces. And I think songwriting is no different, where, just the chance to like, I think Ethan probably proposed it, was like, hey, like we said, let's write together. And then like, sure, let's come to my place. We'll sit on the beach. We'll, I think maybe we even talked about getting a surf in or something like that. And I was like, that's exactly what I need right now. And, I think sometimes that's how creative engagement happens, and on top of that, it was a friendly time. And of course, Heather is the best, and Heather was there. And, we get to hang out with the three of us after the write and share a little bit of what we did. And it was just a great experience, a great first co-write. And it really, and like Ethan mentioned, we got a decent amount of this song done in that first session. And it really felt like a lightning in the bottle moment. Like, wow, all right, like, let's chase this.
So Ethan, when you guys started to do, the co-write and everything, did you already have some lyrics already played out in your head or a melody or anything? Or was this basically, you and Tom sitting on a beach there in Venice Beach, eating a Tijuana hot dog and looking at the surf and, just hanging out and everything. And the lyrics and the melody comes out of that session.
I think all of that is completely accurate, minus the hot dog. So I think that would have been a great addition. Yeah, we basically sat down on the beach and like, let's write something. I don't even know. It was fairly unprompted.
I kind of remember.
Yeah.
I kind of remember, Ethan, you setting up the main guitar part of the song, what opens the song, and like those kind of open sounding chords. And I think we actually started with the chorus. I remember I had a few lines built around this concept of time, and you were playing in this melody, and I think I was just scrolling through notes, and I've had like a little blurb here, and I think I remember like just trying to sing something on top of the chords you were playing, and we all of a sudden were in the moment there.
That's awesome. Okay, so that is summer or fall of 2019.
That was October 2019.
So fall of 2019, and then we're dealing with political stuff here in America. Then we're dealing with a global pandemic, and we have the single "All We Got Is Time" is coming out on June 28th. So rough calculation, I'm looking at close to a 3-year collaboration. So and for those out there who are collaborating with other indie artists or brainstorming or working like with amazing collectives like the LA Songwriters Collective, whatever that collective may or may not be in your local city, and I do urge people to try to find those people. I've been introduced to the LA Songwriters Collective, and just the love, the support, the kinship that they all show to each other is just something I think, globally we need in the music scene, but just for an indie artist, it's just amazing. So we're talking about a 3-year stretch here, and walk us through what were the hurdles? Was it because of the distance? Was it because of a global pandemic? So walk the fan base through those sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, I think like, early in 2020 when the world started kind of shutting down, everyone kind of went radio silent and into their silos for a little bit, especially in LA. And so I feel like that was definitely part of it. But I remember Ethan was one of the few people who I saw in person a couple different times throughout like the summer or late summer and fall before I moved out of LA. And it was through like just having, I think you came over one time to get a burrito at that taco stand outside my apartment, and we kind of just hung out there for a minute, and we just started feeling like, man, we really loved that song. Is this All We Got Is Time song that we wrote, and maybe we can produce it ourselves. I think that was really, we were like, from these just talking over burritos, and just like, hey, like, I think we could pull this off, and I think that's when the gears started turning sometime in the mid or late summer of 2020, even as I was kind of already knew I was going to be moving in a few months.
Yeah, it felt like the right time. I mean, for me, I had been at that point, like when we started recording, it had been a couple of years since I put out any music, and now we're at like 4.5 years. This will be my first release. I know I'm really, really excited. But I think like having sort of the creative partnership and kind of drive to help sort of overcome what felt like definitely a lot of like logistical and kind of mental hurdles in trying to produce music that really could move people, which is really what I've always wanted to do as an artist, and to be able to do that at a high level. And to try to do that ourselves. During the pandemic, I know a lot of artists are making music. So this isn't anything particularly like that hasn't been done, but certainly I think the creative innovation that happened in the music industry kind of in real time through the pandemic certainly influenced our process, right? We started and after kind of recording our own scratch tracks, we used audio movers to record my brother Matt from his kind of rental studio in Oakland, California, with Tom engineering the session remotely. And like that, those tools are very new and very, only recently kind of more widely adopted. So we engineered the drums ourselves remotely from Tom's apartment in Culver City to Oakland. And then, really we're trying to be very careful working with a vocal producer, one of our friends, John Buttrell, in a Chinatown, and went into that studio to record some vocals and acoustic guitars, and then had to carry the process remotely as Tom moved, and to start the next chapter of your life in Texas. And so all of those things, I think, kind of led the process to unfold over time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Tom, where did you grow up at?
So I grew up on the East Coast. I was born in Jersey, down the shore along the beach, and lived in the Baltimore County area for a little while before going to school in Maryland and graduating, and then finding the beach out in LA after graduating college. And that's where I found music again back in 2018. And of course, met Ethan and everyone. We started making this song, and then late 2020, just the changing tides of everything going on in the world. I ended up in Fort Worth, Texas in December of 2020, and I've been there ever since.
And then Ethan, you grew up in Minnesota.
Yes.
And you have quite a bit of family on the East Coast, and there's rhyme and reason. There's a lead up to this question. So we have Tom growing up on the East Coast. We have Ethan growing up in Upper Midwest, and then both moving to the LA area. Tom relocating to Texas, which brings up like this kind of cool dynamic that I want you guys to kind of talk about a little bit. Is obviously regional music we have regional music here in America. Depending on where you're at in the country, there's certain pockets that, country music is dominating. There are pockets that, indie alt is, if you're going more to the Pacific Northwest. You have pockets of the East Coast where I think, punk lives a lot better in those sort of places. So when you guys are writing the song or just writing in general, is your environment affecting the way that you write your music, either lyrically or musically? And Tom, I know you're on a bit of a tour right now, and you are in Nashville currently right now. So as an artist or as an indie artist, I mean, obviously you're making the music or you're writing your music that's coming to you, but are your environmental influences, namely right now, your locations, does that change your music, or does that like empower you to do things different? Are you trying to change your sound to where you're living and what you think people may want to hear?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an influence when you're in different regions. I feel like, especially surrounding yourself with other musicians, and by nature of that, you might get imprinted on through, definitely being in Texas, I've been imprinted a bit more on this like Americana red dirt vibe than I was in LA. But I also feel like it's only part of the concept, because like Ethan and I, we're writing this song in Venice Beach, and the ocean waves are in the background, and the wide vast Pacific Ocean is there for us to stare at, and that's definitely like a physical setting that influenced the music. But I also feel like when you're channeling something, especially like the themes in this song, you're almost trying to channel something that you hope could be appreciated universally. And so I think sometimes the environment isn't necessarily leaving an impression on you as much as allowing you to channel that universal feeling in a way that maybe it speaks to you in a certain way that the West Texas desert speaks to certain other songwriters out here.
Love that. Ethan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree with Tom that it's certainly a lot about, I think the environment can have an impact. And certainly I think the um, focus on the craft of songwriting that is integral, I think, to the songwriting culture in LA has certainly impacted me in the way that I take time with and like it certainly influenced my writing. One of the wonderful things that came out of the pandemic through the Songwriters Collective that Tom and I are part of are these weekly events on Zoom, like called Song Club, and we'd have, I mean, it's still ongoing every Thursday, have 15 or 20 people break into groups of 4 or 5 and each spend 15 minutes with each artist giving folks feedback on a song or a snippet of a song. And that certainly has like helped me sharpen my own sort of process, and that's had an influence. I'm working on a new record now with a producer I actually met through Tom, and sort of the creative tools that he has, and sort of influenced by a particular community of songwriters in LA has definitely influenced the sound that I'm working on, producing right now in the studio. So I do think that those things all have a factor, and I think it's less of, I think it's more around the creative energy that I'm surrounded by, more so than like what a particular fan base might look like in a community. I think that has had the biggest impact on me.
Cool. So the music industry, or how people listen to music, is constantly changing. When I was your guys' age or 10 years younger than that, we didn't have digital music, or we didn't have the capability as an 18-year-old to take a laptop and put some beats together, or lay down a guitar track, or lay down a vocal. I mean, it costs money to find a studio and to do all those sort of things. So as the music industry is ever evolving, do you find it as artists that have been putting out music, and indie artists, of how to market yourself? We live in a TikTok version era where where I'm talking to labels, or if I'm talking to A&R people, they're like, are they on TikTok? Or let's go see how many followers they have on TikTok, or how many views do they have on one of their TikToks. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. But for two indie artists who put out amazing music like you guys do, do you find that strange, or do you find it that, okay, I'm dipping my pinky toe in, and I'm going to try to get my big toe in there really? How do you navigate how people are listening to music these days?
Well, yeah, I don't want to speak for Ethan, although I think he might agree because of what he's done with BBTM out there in LA. But I feel like a big thing I was seeking with my move to Texas was to be able to be in front of people more often. Even though I'm pretty comfortable with social media, I like to share things, and I'm not really on TikTok, although I probably should be. But I do like to post content for the followers. But I really felt like there was something special about live music that is still special. And that was a big reason I went to Texas, to find opportunities to be in rooms with people who are like ready to consume original music, and hopefully music that I'm making. And I feel like, Ethan, you might agree, because of just the way you've set up and established this concert series in your backyard as a way of bringing people together to listen to original music. I mean, I'm sure you feel similarly.
Yeah, as Tom was sort of mentioning, during the pandemic, when all the venues were closed, I was really craving the intimate connection that only live music can provide, for between myself as a songwriter, a performer, and an audience, and the sort of magic that you can create in a listening room setting, and sort of felt like, okay, we could safely have 15 people in our backyard in Venice, and have a couple of folks playing some songs and like bring live music back into our lives. And we did that a couple of times pretty informally, and it was so special. It kind of felt like, okay, this is something we want to keep going. And that's actually, how David and I ended up reconnecting and working together. As I had worked with David on a podcast, or on a live stream during the pandemic, and kind of really felt like values aligned with what High Plateau was trying to do, and kind of hit him up and said, hey, I'm trying to make this concert series happen at our place. We have the space for it. We have connections with artists, and it just felt like such an amazing aligned sort of vision with the type of events and the type of experiences and opportunities for artists that High Plateau and David has been working to create. And so, yeah, the Bring Back the Music series it's really like about, sort of to circle back around in a roundabout way to your question, David, like the high quality connection is really what I crave, both in terms of what I'm doing live, and like how raw and intimate and real and vulnerable can I make you feel through producing like really high quality recorded music. And that is like kind of as much heart as I could put into something as possible. And I think that's like, that can feel challenging to communicate that and translate that in like a 15-second snippet of a TikTok video. And I think that's something that I'm still trying to understand and embrace. I'm solidly a millennial, and I'm still like, I get Instagram, and I'm trying to get TikTok, and we'll work our way there. But I think the focus to me has been like, okay, let's right now has been on the creation. Let's, have this incredible laboratory for songwriting and performance. That's the concert series in my backyard, and focus on producing the single that Tom and I are working on, and producing this record that's coming out next year. And I'm going to have to learn, relearn in a lot of ways how to navigate the like the world of distributing live music, and helping that people can hear the art that we're creating.
Cool. Yeah, because it's amazing of just like for someone who grew up listening to Kate Bush, and of what just basically just happened with her, with her, one of her songs being streamed on a Netflix show, and her song being introduced to 85, I think it's up to 85 million streams since the episode basically was on Netflix, 3-4 weeks ago. And it's just a different way. And I think, Ethan, this is a podcast and people can't see you. And, Tom, the same thing with you. You've been posting some great stuff on your Instagram lately, is that it really does strike a chord with me. And it's one of the reasons why I got involved with the BBLA stuff, is that it is a very vulnerable experience, and is very, as a concert goer or as a music lover, to be able to see people up front, and to be able to listen to them and not hide behind what I think some of these people on TikTok are doing, where they'll do their own live stream and live off a tip or something, or whatever, they get a heart emoji and they get 30 cents off it or something. Is that I do truly value what indie artists like you guys are doing, is that you're trying to get yourself out there, you're trying to get in front of people. And I think that is one of the greatest impacts. I've always told people this, that music brings like all those emotions, and music is played at like almost everything in our life. Like if you get married, there's music. When there's a funeral, there's typically music. There's all of these emotions of life, death. When we're having a bad day, Ethan, you're fortunate, you just walk a few blocks and put headphones on, and you're basically in paradise on beach. And and then Tom, you living in Texas now, you have so many different geographical areas, and you can get close to ocean, and you're close to Austin, Texas, which is, I think, is one of the greater hubs for indie artists in general, or just to establish yourself, or listen to something great. So I do appreciate what you guys are doing and everything. And once again, the song that is being released by Tom and Ethan is All We Got Is Time. It's on June 28th. We currently have the pre-save link. It is in Ethan's Instagram. It is on Tom's Instagram. It is on High Plateau's Instagram. And I believe currently right now, the pre-save is for Spotify and for iTunes. And for those of you who tune in, I always say this, is that when artists put out music, pre-saves are so important for indie artists to, move the song in a certain direction, whether it's an editorial playlist or, just building an email distribution list for future releases or future updates. So I appreciate your guys' time. I'm looking forward to the song. Obviously, I've heard it. And as I started off the podcast, it is still at the age of 48. It is just one of those amazing things to listen to snippets of songs and, watch it evolve, and then see the two individuals who are just so proud of what they did. And not only just the music, but just the collaboration and the bonding and the friendship that, I'm not going to assume, because I know you guys, and that friendship is there, and it's a bond that you guys will keep forever in your life. Lastly, I always kind of try to end up with this. I'll start with you, Tom. Who are you listening to right now, musically?
Well, recently I just started revisiting some of the Revivalists stuff.
Nice.
Love their album. I can't remember. I listened to their album that came out in like 2016, and I loved it. And I'm just getting back into that and listening to some of their more stuff because someone said I sounded like the singer. I was like, I've never heard that. So okay, I'm going to figure out how true that feels, and maybe if there's something I can learn from them.
Ethan, what about you?
Lately, I've been listening to a lot of Ethan Gruska's music, and his former band, the Bell Brigade, put out some amazing records. Also got into this band, Midlake, out of Fort Worth, Texas, actually. And oh man, there's so much good music's being made right now.
Cool. I've recently, like Tom, I just, restarted to digest 10,000 Maniacs. I mean, with the whole Kate Bush thing and watching Stranger Things with my daughter, I think 10,000 Maniacs, Blind Man's Zoo, I believe it came out in 1988 or maybe 1989 with Natalie Merchant on lead vocals, just, brings me back to, a really, really cool time in music. So once again, folks, we have Tom and we have Ethan. They have a collaboration that is coming out on June 28th. All We Got Is Time. It's an amazing track. It's an amazing collaboration. And we urge you to head on over and pre-save it. Follow both of the guys on Instagram. Tom, your Instagram account is?
At Tom Sless. That's less with an S in the front.
There you go. And Ethan, your Instagram account?
MN Child Music.
There you go. And they can both be found on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, and just under Tom Sless. And Ethan on his streaming platforms, you can find his music under the Minnesota Child. Tom, before we run out of time, just briefly, do you have any upcoming releases besides this collaboration? Are we looking forward to new Tom Sless music in 2022?
Possibly not 2022, but most certainly 2023. I've got some exciting studio sessions to kick off in mid-July next month, so I'm excited for that.
Awesome. We're going to have to get you out to LA and do one of our shows out there in Venice. And then Ethan, what about you?
I've been working on my first LP, full-length record with a producer named Justin Glasgow in Eagle Rock. And we'll expect singles to start dripping out from that late in the fall. Really can't wait to share this new music with y'all.
Cool. Once again, guys, thanks for taking out 30 minutes of your time. I know you guys are busy with music, and Tom being on tour and taking a little bit of time out to just chat with us. Once again, guys, this has been Ethan Buckner, aka the Minnesota Child, and Tom Sless. They have their upcoming single, All We Got Is Time, June 28th. It will be streaming on your favorite digital platform, and you can pre-save the song on High Plateau Productions Instagram, Tom's Instagram, and Ethan's Instagram. And thank you all for listening. You've been listening to Beyond the Plateau, a High Plateau Productions podcast. Thanks, guys, and stay safe out there.
Angel, he calls me, does he know that I'm falling from the precipice that I tripped off long ago? If so, Bill, he says, does he know I'm forsaken, the original sinner? But soon he will know, for if I'm going down, I guess I'll take you with me, naked in my garden back at the beginning. And now in your arms, your faith is for you, pitch me again.